Commissioners Court, May 27, 2014. And we will start with a prayer. And Commissioner Vaughn will do that. Pledge of allegiance and also pledge to Texas.
Father God, we thank you for this day, this blessed day, oh Lord, and for all the mercy that you provided us, oh Lord, in the last few days, and blessing that it's been for all the constituent performers, and just to clear the air and just to have this nice breeze, oh Lord, and the awakening of spring. We just give you all the glory and honor right now. And Lord, as we take these proceedings, have our mindset, oh Lord, to one accord, and we do things that are pleasing your sight and are good for the citizens of this county. We ask your blessings upon all the leaders, oh Lord, of this county, and all the first responders, the work that they do on a daily basis, and putting their lives in the gap for us, and all the military personnel, oh Lord, and this theater and all the theaters around the world. We just ask the blessings upon them and their families for the sacrifices they continue to make. Guide us, Lord, with us this day, and we ask in your name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To honor and protect this flag, I
pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Item number 1, approval of minutes. That's from May 12, 2014. Power County Commissioners Court meetings.
Approved.
Have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second. And any corrections? No correction being done. Motion to approve. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Item number 2, vouchers. To consider and act upon the approval of the payment of vouchers processed by the County Auditor's Office for the period of May 7, 2014 through May 20th, 2014. Those items are from check numbers 155573 through 155837 and wire transfer numbers 378 through 385 in the amount of $2,187,676.70. Entertain a motion.
approved.
I have a motion to approve and a second.
Second for discussion. I have one question for the court, page 12 of 34, check number 155698. Is where this is a travel advance to Galveston, dated for June 4th. Carrie, can you help me understand what this travel request is for?
This is a probate school that they host annually in Galveston. For probate.
Judge, where you're not currently doing probates.
Yeah.
Yes.
I ask for guidance from our county auditor and county attorney.
I have no idea. I think he's signing some probate. I don't know that there's doing any probate here, is that correct, Judge? But I think he's reviewing probate documents, I understand. I think signing inventories and things like that. I understand he's been doing that all along. So he's performing some duties.
So that's under the purview of
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what they're briefing, you know, I don't know anything. You know, it's a regular school, they have the judges to do programs, you know, continuing education. I don't know exactly what they cover.
Yeah, the curriculum is normally attached with the travel advance, is that correct? Do you have that, Carrie? Okay, would you mind reviewing that and just giving us opinion? I guess my point of caution is just the travel.
Well, I don't need to review the agenda. I mean, I'll say this. I mean, the judge in his discretion feels like he needs to go to that probate school, then he's entitled to make that judgment. The Commissioner's Court can always vote if they choose to do that. There's nothing. It's the same. We face the same dilemma nearly every election cycle. There's always. It's not unusual for an officer who is going out of office to sign up for continuing education. just because they're still performing the duties of their office. And so, I mean, at this point, the judge is within his rights to request it. Commissioner's Court, I guess, are within the rights to decline. I think it's not.
Yeah, and I would certainly agree with that and agree that we face this, every election cycle. I think what makes this situation unique, is certainly from my perspective, is that we do have others filling in for those duties. So that's really where the root of that question comes from.
Sure, I understand.
From my perspective,
I
at least.
understand.
I'll open it up to the court.
I think it's a situation that warrants us looking into it, and if we feel like this is not a proper thing to be happening at this time, we can vote on it.
I think, to be honest, everything you said here is certainly true and appropriate. It is somewhat unique, Dave, in that we have a unique situation in this county.
I agree, and I'm not speaking to the appropriateness of it or making a judgment on practice or not. All I'm giving is the legal background. Y'all make a decision, what policy decision. I'm just saying what the legal background is.
I agree. I think we do need to delve into the policy in that respect. Some of the courts. I'm not sure anything, because he is an elected official, anything that we can do respect this. But it's certainly noteworthy to bring up. And I'd say again, this is a unique situation.
2 years ago, we had a similar situation, not exactly similar, but, and you did come up with some sort of a policy that said that the elected official that was voted out of office or not, chose not to run again, could spend their travel money for that budget year. But the following budget year, they had to have approval to use any money. In other words, we start our budget year 1st of October. So any expenditures after the 1st of October, the Commissioner's Court had to approve that travel before any money could be spent. That is what I think the policy was set at. So, this is unique, but is this something that we get some value out of? I don't know. I can't make that call.
I think everything that's been stated, it is unique. We have set some sort of a policy, and I concur with Mr. Church 2 years ago of an outgoing elected official. This is twofold unique, and I think we all understand where we're coming from in respect to that. So, again, I think it's noteworthy to bring up. It's something that this court probably needs to look at seriously and deal with more so than what we've done prior to that. What we can do now, I'm not sure, Dave, if there's anything we can do other than an up and down vote just to.
I think that's it. At this point, your question before you is just what to do about these outfits.
I haven't been privy to the, what's on the agenda for that particular school. And is it something that we would see is justified for the judge to go to? Okay, and if that's the case, I don't think we have any much option here.
Well, let me see. To tell you the truth, almost all of it, there's one section at the end, 2 hours on mental health law, and so Judge Butt gives an overview of mental health law. We had someone else do a mental health hearing, but everything else is general enough. Like, for example, practical aspects of guardianship law, the role of the ad litem, attorney's fees in probate court, bonds, inventories, and countings. That's certainly right on point with the stuff that he's doing now. Overview of probating a will, dependent administration, independent administration, heirship proceedings, and small estate affidavits, the judge's role in actions against the probate appointee. There's nothing really here that specifically applies only in situations where a hearing is conducted.
respect to, that agenda and the business days that we have, and we end up doing a line serve at low.
There's a real gray area here. I mean, again, Judge Ware is still doing probate duties. And if, in his judgment, he needs to go to this court to be able to perform those duties, that's probably that's, there's some obligation to accept that assessment as being a good one.
I'm gonna follow his leadership on this, and, it is what they say, it is what it is, so.
And for me, in my perspective, I think that's new information, that's actively being done in the probates, or being signed by the judge. That's not information that I had prior to this court. That's very new information for me.
And property.
I'll just speak as the clerk of that court, and he is doing the follow-up, some of the follow-up work on some of the inventories, annual accounts, annual reports that are done in guardianships as far as the hearing. Judge Roberts is holding the hearings.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions?
No questions?
We're hearing none, all those in favor? Passes 4-1, one opposed. Item number 3, to recognize the insurance report. Okay, you this morning, have anything on that?
There's nothing remarkable in the insurance report for this.
Thank you, so recommend. Item number 4, treasurer's report. We consider an act upon the following: A, approval of the 2014 investment policy, and B, to recognize the monthly treasurer's report. And happy birthday. She is the 2039 today, am I correct on that? I ain't going for 21, so, but happy birthday.
Thank you, guys. Okay, the only thing that I can, probably report this morning on our, the treasurer's report, our bank total is $16,466,512.47 this morning. And our total investments at this point is $16,422,66.96. So we've got about half of our cash invested. And in June, I will invest again in Cedars, the 3-month Cedars that will pay us 35 basis points. Tax pool has steadily stayed at 2 points for tax pool and 6 for tax pool. So I only have about $1 million left in tax pool just because the bank is really working with us to help. About $16 million in just our account, earning 25 basis points. Any questions on the monthly? Okay. Then on the investment policy, I also checked with Dave to verify that there were no changes as far as legislative. And so I didn't make any changes on our investment policy. The things that I would like to change or add to the policy this year is a list of authorized brokers. It may be an option that we want to use since we have the 17 million surplus, is agencies or repos, or it just kind of gives us some other options to use. So this is a list of brokers that I have references to, and other counties in Texas I know that are using them, and so something to reference. Before I'd actually use one of these brokers, I would come back to you guys and talk to you and tell you this is what was offered and this is what I'd like to do. But this way we will have an approved list that we can use in the event that we choose to. And then the other document is the Texas Public Funds Investment Act certification. And this is new what I'd like to do, and the purpose of this document is when I send out our approved investment report, then those entities will sign this form stating, and it just is kind of more of a security for Potter County that we know they've received it and acknowledged that they have our current policy to follow.
This would go to all of these on this list, in other words, is that right?
It will only if we use those numbers that go to them
Okay.
at that point. And they would have a policy given to them at the point that we decide to do this.
Okay, they've been vetted for good people.
Absolutely.
How much difference would there be between these investments?
You know, I guess it probably would depend on the investment, what we were purchasing and the terms of that investment. So it would vary. But it would just depend on what they are offering. And I get stuff every day from them, you know, what's out there. Any other questions?
We move that we approve the 2014 investment policy as presented. Second.
Motion to approve, second. All in favor? That's 5-0. Thank you. Go celebrate.
All right, see y'all later.
At your office. Item number 5, Park County projects, various report, Park County projects, and taking any action necessary. Mike, this morning.
How y'all doing?
Mike, we don't have any backup, is that correct?
I have a second meeting, I just give verbal,
Okay.
first one is when I give the written documentation. What I'll be doing is making you aware of the changes on the verbal report. The Texas Historic Commission projects, the acoustical wall panel project, it is completed. Carrie has filed the documentation on supplemental funding to receive the funding back, and I have completed my completion report with the Texas Historic Commission. County Court of Law 2 handrail project has now been completed. Took a long time to get the parts in, get that done. Having Judge Sermon's court. The courthouse project on phase 3 on the outstanding warranty items, we had 9 items. David filed the paperwork, I believe, through Journeyman Construction's attorney. Last Friday, or Thursday and Friday, I received notification from some of the subcontractors that could have been affected by this. They basically have received a mandatory letter from Journeyman Construction to come and get the work done. So like David, I talked about this, this just clearly explains that Journeyman understands that they are still liable for these warranty claims. Out of one of those claims, number 64, Commissioner Bond has just signed the documentation, the contract agreement with one of the local subs, which no cost to Potter County to completely replace all the caulking on the building. We'll be gearing up to start that next week. Got
So
any
Mike,
questions on?
I just have a follow-up question to that. So is it fair to say that as a result of the documentation that has been sent, now everyone is really kind of being called back to action to complete all of the warranty items, or there's just a few
There's
that?
2 of them that we know of right now. And they're local contractors, and these are 2 that I believe are involved in the lawsuit with.
Okay, thank you.
The Santa Fe Elevator Modernization Project, we have got a meeting scheduled this week in order to get that project rolling, to get the cost in and the project design. Santa Fe project roof has been completed. We're tying up a few loose ends right there. Your LED lighting project starts this week on top of the building. Hopefully by next week, we'll see that building rebuilt on top. The hailstorm projects, the non-emergency projects, the 2 JP facilities, Bushman Fire Station, West 6th Annex, 2 Bowie properties, and extension building. Flood project, we did walkthroughs last week with the general and subcontractors in the authority for Lubbock. David is awaiting the cost to come back to him to present to court in order to proceed forward with those repairs. Out of one of those projects, just to make it aware right now, the county extension building, we're for sure that this is one item that's over and above what the insurance is allowed, since we're making some changes out there, as you're aware, Commissioner, on the carpet versus tile issues. Out at the fairgrounds, out of all the property out there, we have completed inspection on the 2 Kimball buildings, 2 restrooms, and the northeast maintenance barn. I have reviewed the report out there, very minimal damage was addressed, basically like the other buildings, did not receive much damage. I guess Dave and I'll be getting a report to Virgil in the near future. We just need to know how to proceed forward with the buildings at the fairgrounds. Fire Station 3, y'all are gonna look at, property acquisition possibly today. The retro commissioning project that you have got involved with Excel, I completed all paperwork last Friday, I'll paperwork with the welding company out of Houston this week in order to perform all the studies on the buildings. And the, energy efficiency rebate program, we completed all documentation there as well. It's, everything's been completed, we're just waiting to hear back from Energy Efficiency Solutions with Excel's approval to see what type of rebate money we can use. And the last item is our security project at the district courts. I have started the United assessment over there, that's the only thing that's been done on this. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you for your report.
Thanks, Mike.
Item number 6, Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service, Building a Better Texas Award presentation. Amy, can you do that one? Oh, they're all here. They're all here.
Good morning, Commissioners. We're here today to honor a 100-year partnership, 100 years of building a better Texas. In May 1914, the National Cooperative Extension Service was established by the Smith-Weaver Act, which created a state-by-state network of educators who extend land-grant university knowledge and life skills to help people thrive and prosper. Your cooperation and support has made it possible for the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service to reach all Texans with much-needed educational programs that help to make their life better. To show our appreciation, we would like to present the Potter County Commissioners Court with our Building a Better Texas Award. Thank you for helping us to extend knowledge and provide solutions in your county. We couldn't have done this without you. We do mean that sincerely.
Good. Let's start.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, sir.
We'll just put it right here for right now.
Good job. I did.
Congratulations to each of you. Thank
There
you.
you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, the Cornerstone Outreach Ministry New Beginnings Baptist Church donation to consider an act upon donation to the Park County Sheriff's Office Detention Center by Cornerstone Outreach Ministry and New Beginning Baptist Church of 150 plastic chairs for church services. Anybody from the Sheriff's Office here? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, they're basically the volunteer chapel that we have out there, got some chairs to be donated. We don't have anything in our multi-purpose rooms for church services, so it'll be enough to put 25 chairs in their stacking so you can move them out of the way. So it'll have 25 in each pod. We appreciate Chaplain Ashford. He's really done a lot since he's come on board with us, and like I say, it's all volunteer work, but he really does a lot of work out there. I mean, he's retired from Pantex, but he spends a whole lot of time out there trying to help these individuals. He talks with their families and stuff, and I'd say he's done a good job. Him and his wife. Well.
I make a motion that we accept the donation provided by Cornerstone Outreach Ministry and New Beginnings Baptist Church for plastic chairs.
Second. Alfonso. Oh, yeah. Have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Item number 8, Insurance. To hear a report from insurance agent Steve Lappin to approve the following renewals. Consider and act upon the purchase of cyber media liability insurance in the amount of $12,808 from AIG, and B, to consider an act upon the renewal of property insurance with no increase in property insurance rates in the amount of $88,038 from the Texas Association of Counties. And I think Mr. Lavitz here. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Well, I've got a very good report, via that Texas Association of Counties has made an offer to renew the insurance without any increase in rate or changes in terms, deductibles, conditions. The only change is the increase in property value from 129 million to 156 million, which is an agreement with the appraisal that we had back in November, which we accepted in January. And if you will recall that, that was resulted in about $15,000 annual increase with those property values, which we were anticipating only half of that for the remainder of the year. And they have forgave that increase as well. So we're not going to owe the $7,500 that we thought we were going to owe, and they held the property rate level. So just a fantastic renewal. The market dictate if they would have doubled this and increased our deductible, we couldn't have found anything better in the marketplace. So it is, that tells you a little bit about how good this renewal is. The cyber liability renewal comes up June 11th, and I have recommended a change from Beasley, who we were with last year, to AIG. One reason is the premium is about $5,000 cheaper, but the other is that they offer some loss control and consulting services that we think we need, and David asked for 6 months ago. We've been trying to find someone that could provide those consulting services, and we haven't found anybody at a reasonable price anyway to do that. And AIG offers those services with the policy. So we haven't had any experience with AIG on their cyber liability consulting and loss control services. They have, but it's whatever they offer is better than what we have right now. So we're recommending that. The policy is a little broader with a few more additions and coverage limits than the Beasley policy as well. So we're recommending that. We will be trying to go from June 11th to July 1st, so we'll have the policies, the property and cyber liability together all in one day.
Steve, I have a question on the cyber liability. If I remember correctly, last year was our first year attempting that type of coverage. And it was really new to the industry at that point and semi-buzzword.
Yeah.
But in terms of the environment that we were in a wireless environment, the court felt the need to at least start to address the unknown, the potential of the unknown. Is there more information on that particular policy?
There is more information. It's becoming a larger concern for more private companies and large institutions. As we continue in this cyber generation, it is a huge issue that everybody has to consider. And of course, we saw the Target situation, and that there's a lot more issues that are becoming more prevalent as we continue in this cyber world.
I just wanted to clarify what cyber insurance was. Now, if we, for example, this is what I'm thinking it is, and I just want you to, if we get hacked, say, some personal information from people that are in our judicial system or whatever gets out, we get sued, then that's what this is for, just to help protect us from those types of things.
There's multiple facets to the coverage. One is the liability that's created because of a breach that you're talking about. Somebody hacks in, or HR releases an email that has private information on it, or somebody hacks into our system, or just any kind of breach that is created. The liability associated with that is the primary coverage, the liability for the county. But there are a lot of other things that the policy covers, such as notification costs, forensics investigations to discover the cause of the breach. There's things like cyber extortion. If somebody got into our system and was able to shut us down until we paid a certain amount of money, there's just a lot of different facets to the coverage. There's also coverage for event control, for us to hire either a law firm or a public relations firm to control reputation and help us manage a cyber event.
Very good.
Anybody else? Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the purchase of cyber media liability insurance in the amount of $12,808 from AIG, and also approve the renewal of property insurance with no increase as presented to the court.
Second. Motion to approve with a second. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Thank
This is
you.
great news. Thank you, Steve.
Item number 9, formal proposal number 1088-14 data and voice services. To consider and act upon awarding data and voice services to various vendors as listed on the award recommendation page. All vendors recommended for award have the highest evaluated proposal in the discipline being recommended for award. Patrick, how are you this morning?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good to see you.
Well, it's not often in the IT world I get to come to you and tell you we're gonna save some money. But that's the case today. We have a 3-year contract that is coming up at the end of August. It's currently with AMA Textel. They provide our telephone services, fax lines, that sort of thing, also our internet connectivity and our connection between all our buildings. Road and bridge, fire and rescue, the jail, et cetera. And so, we put that out for bid, I guess a couple months ago when the RFP went out. We had 4 vendors respond to it, and basically we chose the best vendor for each of those different services. The proposal you got in front of you, we're using AT&T for some internet, Pathways for some backup internet. It also includes wireless internet in the event of a cable cut downtown, or someone drives a truck into the telephone pole, that sort of thing. It increases our bandwidth, our speed in all the locations, and all of this while saving about $60,000 or so for the next 3 years. So,
Good to shop around.
competition's good.
Jason, can you speak a little bit about the purchase of the equipment as a part of this recommendation?
Yes. The services themselves will save us about $82,000 over the next 3 years. Included in what I've recommended is some equipment that we'll put at the Santa Fe data center that will automatically transfer between these internet connections in the event of a cable cut or something like that, so that there's no downtime, so that our folks, sheriff's office, the jail, all of them, so that we have no outages, that we zero downtime. That piece of equipment is about $20,000, and I've got it in next year's budget that you'll see here today.
What about any transition, should the recommendation pass, any transition from vendor to vendor or downtime that the county may experience?
Part of the RFP process, the biggest weight that we put on anybody's proposal was on their game plan that they would present to us to have no downtime. Now, nothing is guaranteed, obviously, but the way that, if we go this route, the incoming phone vendor is going to set up all new phone lines and have those up and running and tested before we transfer service over to them. So in case there's any problem with the copy lines or anything like that, those will already be tested and have no problem with that.
And all the existing equipment will be compatible?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, all of our short equipment, all that sort of
One final question, the proposed savings, the breakout that you've provided is roughly 81,000, and you just netted out the 20,000 purchases where the 61,000 is coming from? For most part.
Yeah, and a chunk of that is, we're gonna save about 30,000 over the next 3 years. We've been paying $900 a month for a wireless backup when you go between the sheriff's office and the Santa Fe building. We're gonna buy we're going to get the equipment. 911 folks have agreed to pay for it. It's gonna cost them about $1,000 one time. It'll do away with that $900 a month that we spend for this service.
David, any feedback on the vendors, and maybe the proposal process?
It was pretty smooth, everything was normal. Like I said, we released the proposals, we had 4 responses, lots of questions and dialogue back and forth, as well as clarifications once we got the proposals. Jason and I went through it pretty extensively looking through them. I will note there are contracts attached, except for AT&T, because I didn't get that till late Friday, but I would like your award to be contingent on the county attorney and purchasing, negotiating approved contracts with the vendors. The price won't change, but there may be some terms and stuff like that.
Other questions? We have a motion to approve. Now this would be contingent on the county attorney working the details out. Okay.
Second.
Have a second. Commissioner McGee. And all in favor? Passes 5-0.
Thank you both for your work on that. It's a motion.
Item number 10, Commissioner's courtroom seal. Now, we're not talking about one of those.
A mascot.
Okay. All right, consider an act upon approving the purchase and placement of a Potter County seal behind the Commissioner's bench. And Commissioner Church, you want to lead off on this?
Yeah. Well, actually, when Commissioner Kelly and I were down at San Angelo, we were visiting the Texas Correctional booth, and they had all these different seals for counties. And I've noticed in other commissioners' courtrooms that I've visited that they all have a seal behind the courtroom. So I thought it was kind of neat. I think Commissioner Kelly thought it was a good idea, and Dave, you've got some examples.
Yeah, this is a sample only, but this is the size that we will be looking at putting up. It's 18 inches. And I think Mike had looked at, we could actually use the anchor that was there for the display case up there and it would fit right there. So obviously wouldn't say Harris County, but we were thinking state of Texas across the top and then Potter County at the bottom. The cost on this, it's $95.18. Carrie and I discussed just taking out the Commissioner's Court stationary and office supplies, and I don't really need the approval to purchase it, but we wanted the approval at least to hang it and get the court's consensus before we made a change to it.
So we're gonna put above the scissors out?
It was the same location as the scissors.
Oh, okay. What are we gonna do with the scissors?
No idea. We have some other flags and awards the county has received, for this project here. We need to decide where we're gonna place them.
Don't you have any problem replacing the scissors with the seal?
Yeah.
Okay. Got the
One
approval
thing,
out there.
of course, this isn't on the agenda, but an idea like that is maybe a glass cabinet here with some of our other plaques and awards. Hanging in that corner, it's kind of a blank corner, or that corner. Someplace that we can display all of our plaques. This just got today too.
All right, let's take care of the one item we have on the agenda. Those in favor of placing the seal back here.
Would you like me to make a motion, Commissioner? Yeah.
I'm sorry, we'll do that first.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the county seal in the amount of, I'll say $100.
Second.
Motion approved and second, all in favor. Passes 5-0.
Very good.
Okay, Okay, item number 11, the elevator maintenance contract. To hear a report, take any action necessary on the county's elevator maintenance contracts. Michael?
David and I have been working together on this. The current contract that we have with ThyssenKrupp Elevator Service, we have not received the service that was agreed upon per the contract. I think we worked on clauses at the state, one of the state contracts years ago when our previous purchasing agent was here, had wanted to move forward in order to save some money on our elevator maintenance. This is probably one of our biggest issues in the county, of one of our contracts that we do not have maintenance. There's no preventive maintenance being performed. I visited with David Harder about this. I'm asking the Commissioners Court to cancel this contract effective September 1st, I believe it is. 90-day notice to them. That way, what I'm asking, David and I have already visited about this. I want to put this out for bid this time. You get a better groups to come in and bid, you get a better choice of contractors coming in. So from my standpoint, they were a breach of contract for not performing their job duties on the preventive maintenance on the contracts. They went from 3 technicians down to 1 technician. The closest technician to us is in Midland, Texas. We had 2 entrapments here a while back. One of them, we had a response time of an hour and a half. That's not suitable for an entrapment when somebody's trapped in an elevator. My staff responds to those entrapments, tries to keep the people calm until we can get a technician on site. By state law, we're not allowed to remove them from the elevators. So I'm asking the Commissioners Court this morning to approve the notification to be presented by David to ThyssenKrupp Elevator Service to give them notice that we are canceling their contract effective the last day of August.
So Mike, I'm assuming part of the response time and lack of service that we're indicating today, that's been escalated within the organization. They're aware this would not be new information to the company. Is there any feedback that they provided?
They have promised Potter County on numerous occasions that they would correct this. David and I had a meeting with them 2 months ago, probably. January. We brought them into a meeting, made them very well aware of all of our concerns, the things that they're not taking care of. They have promised Potter County they will get more staff in this area. We've seen a technician come on and spent probably maybe a week here at Santa Fe building. That is not suitable. We need them to go through all of our properties. The gentleman finally returned last week, spent a couple of hours out here. So it's inadequate for the type of service that I require for our elevators here in Potter County. You notice we have a lot of them down a lot of times. It's because the technicians, they do not have on site here, do not have enough to cover this area. Within the new contract that will eventually be going out in the bid documents, I've changed a lot of that. There'll be a lot of mandatory requirements in there that these technicians or companies keep technicians doing preventive maintenance other than response calls to Potter County.
I'm surprised that this company is falling down on the job. This is a reputable company.
We see a lot of that. The elevator industry is one of the biggest industries that's just kind of fallen apart. Years ago, we had back in the 80s, we had a reputable company, the district courts provided great service. They started downsizing when the economy started changing. They went from 3 technicians down to 1 technician, and 1 technician covered the southern part of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, all the way down to Lubbock. So we cannot have that. I mean, we're utilizing taxpayers' money here. We want to get the best that we can.
So Michael, we fairly confident that we can put this out for bid, that there's a pool of vendors that would have the expertise or the expertise to fill the number of technicians in this area?
That is one of the mandatory requirements that we're putting in the new bid specifications, that they meet these requirements. Years ago, these elevator companies would team up with another elevator company. Hey, I cannot get there quick enough. Can you help me out? Can you go take care of this? I feel that they are. There's 4 companies that we know of, once it goes out for bid, that Yeah, whether or not they all can meet the requirements of the technicians, that's something to be seen whenever the bids do come in, but it's mandatory. We've got to get the people here to respond. If it does not happen, I don't know what we'll do.
That was my next question.
I wouldn't have any idea. If we cannot get any contracts, bidders in to meet those mandatory requirements. It's just the industries that are downsizing, like a lot of people are. Finding the manpower is very, very hard. These technicians that work for these companies, they'll move from one company to another company, just back and forth.
How does this tie into the modernization project?
It does not.
doesn't.
Does not. This has nothing to do with it. Once we get into the modernization, David and I'll go through that contract there. On the new vendor that gets that actual scope of work, they will have the warranty period on that project over there for a duration of 1 year. Then we'll bring in this company if they're still on our elevator contract at the time. It's just something we need to address to try to get our elevators taken care of and back in.
Any further discussion? Judge has approved the cancellation of this contract as of August 31st, and to seek further bids.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Passes.
Thank you.
Item 12, tax office, sale of property to the following. Consider and act on the request from the tax assessor collector to sell a piece of property in a private sale. The property is located at 833 South Virginia. Taylor, how are you this morning?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Just need y'all's approval again.
What if we didn't do that? How would you handle it?
I don't know, I haven't crossed that yet.
I approve.
We have a motion to approve the sale. I'll second. Discussion?
Just a follow-up question, Sherry. I'm just looking through this property. Anything unusual about the property location that we would be aware of?
No, the people that bought it just weren't able to make it to the sheriff's sale when we had it up originally.
It was still available.
We have a motion to approve, second, all in favor? That's 5-0.
Thank you.
Item 13, Union Pacific Distribution Services, Memorandum of Understanding. Do hear a presentation from the Union Pacific regarding a proposed distribution facility in support of wind energy projects, and to consider and act upon a memorandum of understanding for maintenance of a portion of Lakeside Drive. David?
Commissioner, and I'm sorry I didn't catch you in time, but I got an email from Union Pacific representative who's going to be here. He had family emergency, had canceled out for today. I got this email late Friday.
Oh, so you tell me I read that for nothing?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Come on.
All right.
Come on, man.
So
All right, we'll pass this.
we passed this to the nine. I appreciate it. Sorry about that.
I'll remember this one, Dave.
Okay.
Item 14, tax abatement. To consider and act upon renewing the county's guidelines and criteria for tax abatement agreements and the application for tax abatement, and take other action necessary.
We gave a proposal to you last time, and I made some changes in it. I think I incorporated suggestions that were made, and made a couple others that I thought were incorrect. And so that you should have a draft of what we're currently considering. Remember that before you do any tax statements, you have to have adopted guidelines for the county. And indicated to the public that you're considering, willing to consider tax abatements. And so our guidelines ran out March the 27th. They only last for 2 years. And so we have to, if we're going to consider any tax abatements, we have to re-adopt those.
I have a couple of suggestions and questions on the new proposed language, if you will.
Okay.
And I think you did, Dave, I think as a follow-up from the previous court, you sent the red line items. That's not what's included in the packet, but you had sent the red line items of what you suggested to change. And I went through the language of the previous version and the revised that's presented to the court today. There is one clause that was on the original and it spoke to eligible jurisdiction. And it's a clause that I think is helpful to at least have back in. I'm just speaking to what that means in Potter County. Just think it was helpful language, so I recommend that that be added back in.
Okay.
And then I have a question on the proposed that you provided today on page 3, section 4, additional criteria for abatement. A and B is speaking to the minimum, the project must provide utilization of Potter County businesses, 25%, minimum of 25% of new full-time jobs to be created by the project, etc. Just a follow-up question to that is, how is that currently monitored by the existing abatements that we have in place?
I do not know.
Do we know?
No.
We shouldn't.
I don't know.
How do we know that they are complying to the commitment of the contract they signed? We have no way of auditing or at least having a track of what they actually have done.
Well, I assume we would want them to file a report. We never asked them to do that.
So maybe, you know, since we're reviewing it and we're in the process of going through a lot of that detail again, maybe it warrants, if we have it in there, I guess the root of that is, then we should have a due process to really document that. And there's a clause in here in particular that obviously is a disclaimer on behalf of the court to say we can always go back and review the abatement and make sure it's a hearing.
And I'll say too that these particular guidelines are what, 3 years old?
Sure.
A little over 3 years old. So I'm not sure that we ever actually agreed to a tax abatement to follow those, because I think we made an exception for those for the Bill helicopter.
Yeah, I think we had
Which I believe was the most
one.
recent one we've done. So we are allowed to make exceptions to those, and frequently do when we're dealing with a reinvestment, zone that the city is already involved in.
Come on, Brian, I know that you're anxious to be able to speak to some of that.
Thank you all. I just want to try and answer your question.
Want to identify yourself to the court, please?
Yes, Brian Jennings, I'm Vice President of Business Development at Amarillo Economic Development Corporation. The EDC is always a party to every tax abatement agreement, and the companies that we are in those agreements with, along with the taxing jurisdictions, those companies have to comply with our agreement before they receive tax abatement. So we actually monitor kind of indirectly for the county. Now, the guidelines and criteria that the county approves are much more stringent than the guidelines that the city and Amarillo College and the Groundwater District approves. So there's a few more layers in there. Depending on how this goes, we would try to implement those as best we could and go from there. They have to be in compliance with our agreement, our separate agreement on the project, to be in compliance with the tax abatement.
So, and I know you don't have this document, so I'm just gonna read it for the sake of discussion. And again, because we're vetting through a lot of this language, so for me, personally speaking, now is the time to kind of make sure that we really have this aligned. Additional criteria for abatement, there's a clause in there that speaks to the project must provide for the utilization of Potter County businesses for a minimum of 25% of the total cost of construction contracts and annual supply. And then a B item to that is the company must hire Potter County residents for a minimum of 25% of the new full-time jobs to be created by the project. So if I'm hearing you correctly, Brian, AEDC is indirectly monitoring those thresholds that we will have in place.
That's not correct.
Okay.
The city, Amarillo College, and the Groundwater District have guidelines and criteria. Those guidelines and criteria do not specifically state that X amount of dollars have to be spent in their jurisdiction X amount of the new jobs being created have to be in their jurisdiction. I think it would be awfully difficult to try and track those dollars for those people. A lot of that is because they don't have to provide that to us. They don't have to provide where those employees live. They have to provide to us that those employees exist, but we don't really know where they come from.
And is it somewhat misleading to have that even to be negotiated in contract if they would pose that criteria as a carrot to enhance the acceptance of the contract?
Normally, Commissioner, our contracts are in place before the tax abatement is in place with a clause that allows them to opt out. So we would have to work with the county to implement any kind of changes going forward to make sure that those are in our contracts. I think that it would be awfully difficult just from a privacy perspective for those employers to tell us where their employees are coming from. And then what precludes those employees from moving from one place to another? Absolutely nothing. So I think it kind of provides a.
What is a good faith effort?
That's correct. And really it's based on the investment in the county in this case.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner.
My questions, questions more like statements. First of all, an abatement should benefit both parties, in my opinion. And the reason I think Potter County's criteria or guidelines are different is that we have a line. Amarillo does not. It takes in all of the both counties across that line, and so it doesn't matter where they live. The reason we give an abatement is to encourage businesses, but there has to be something in it for the county as well. And so if all the people who work there go live in Randall County, then they're paying taxes in Randall County. They're not paying property taxes here to offset that abatement. And the same with, if it was my doing, I'd kind of like to see some of the higher paid employees have to live in our county. Because they're going to be the ones that have the higher priced homes, and they'll have to pay higher taxes. So the county has to get something out of it, and that's why it's in here, I think, is because, if we give a tax abatement and the business gets all the benefits, we get none, then what are we getting out of it? That's my question.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to note, Commissioner, in the proposed document, that was part of the original. That was not added to what was presented today. That was on the original guidelines prior to them expiring.
Yes, and really the benefit to Potter County in this case is the delay in the value of the investment over that, let's call it a 10-year period. Once that hits the tax rolls, it's worth a higher value. Presumably taxes are going to be either static or slightly higher, so that's really the benefit.
Yeah, and again, to your point, Commissioner, is the net effect of that it's not new language, and so all the abatements that have been previously approved were under this language, and maybe it was a good faith effort that it would be completed in that manner, but I think we're at a point in our city, quite honestly, in our county, that we continue to grow and really need to probably have some aggressive controls on that, around that. And maybe that's operationally working with AEDC of what controls can be in place so that the core can truly stand up to the taxpayers at the end of the day and say, we're seeing the net effect of X, Y, Z. And I think that's the root of what we're after. So it was just kind of more of a question of how are we monitoring that language that has quite honestly been in there for some time. And then the only other change that I had to recommend, Dave, is on page 4, section 6, which is the application and hearing section. I know that we now, as a result of the last abatement a couple years ago, is my perspective, we completed a formalized application process.
Yes.
So I thought this was probably a good section. I know it speaks to filling out a written request, but it might also warrant some language to fill out the application process that I know was turned into the county judge's office. but to really speak to the fact that that application does exist. If I remember right, that application does speak to a lot of these kind of questions, if you will, of what's in the guidelines.
Yes.
So I thought, I would, ask that we add the application process back in.
Would you do me a favor and send some proposed language for that?
Yeah, I can absolutely do that.
Just a typo on page 5, under recapture. Second line in that statement says, in the event that the applicant falls to perform, probably should say fails.
Okay, thank you.
And on page 6, Dave, the sunset provision, section 11, it references, May 12th. I think it was part of the original. I'm not sure if we need to change that to the 27th.
Yeah,
I think
I'll
it's
do
just-
that. Yeah, we'll do that when we get a copy of that.
Yeah, the only, if we want to go ahead and vote on it today, the only changes other than discussion that we've had this morning that I suggested was adding the eligible jurisdiction section back in. And during the application and hearing process, adding language to include the formal application process.
Okay.
Those are just the 2 changes.
Any discussion? You want to put that in form of motion?
Sure. I would like to make a motion to renew the county's guidelines and criteria for tax abatement agreements with the proposed changes discussed in court.
Second. Motion to approve and a second, all in favor? Passes 5-0.
Dave, there is a second item on here. I'm not sure if you need a second motion, the application for tax abatement. I'm not sure if that's that second document or the resolution.
No, that's the resolution, that's part of this process though. We do need to have the court, it just, we're required in statute to adopt a resolution saying that we're going to just pay the tax abatement. Just something put on record, get public notice, so we do need to approve that resolution as well. Thank you for that. It's sort of implied in what the action we just took, but I think it'd be better to have it explicitly.
I'd move that the Potter County Commissioners Court approve the resolution expressing the intent of the county to participate in tax abatement agreements. Second.
Motion to approve and a second. Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your work on this.
Item number 15, Freeport tax exemption, aircraft parts. That's section 11.251, of the tax code, consider an act upon amending the tax exemption previously granted to extend the time limit from 175 days to 730 days. David?
I don't know that much about this, but tax stuff, but basically back in, I think it was 1994, 95, and I double checked with the tax appraisal district, and they were kind enough to educate me with it. We passed a tax exemption for certain goods that were kind of passing through the county, and, then on their way out, rather than taxing them as personal goods, you gave an exemption to those for a period of 175 days. The last election that passed a constitutional amendment that extended that period of time, if the commissioners chose to do that, from 175 days to 700 some odd days, whatever the resolution says, for aircraft parts only. It's to give, so that aircraft manufacturing businesses in Texas who assemble, bring, and build helicopter, especially comes to mind in this. So what this resolution does is extends the time for those aircraft parts are exempt from taxation for up to that period of time while they're in Texas, and they're assembled and shipped on out. They don't get taxed. If they're shipped out of here before that period, you don't tax them. So that's what it is. And so I think I provided some information for you about that from different groups, and Brian would probably be able to speak to that as well.
Thank you, Brian Jennings. So there are 2 types of inventory tax exemptions that companies can take advantage of in Texas. You have triple Freeport, and the reason it's triple is because the city, the county, and the college all exempt inventory that leaves, comes into the building, and it leaves as a finished good within 175 days. That's 6 months. And then there's goods in transit. The Freeport, you have to ship it outside of Texas. Goods in transit is the same thing, only it goes to a specific location in Texas. We have single goods in transit now, because the city's the only one that has that at the taxing jurisdiction. You can take one, but you can't take both as a company, so you really have to manipulate your inventories. Last year, the state made a constitutional amendment called Proposition 3 that allows for aviation aerospace companies to take advantage of an extended inventory time whereby they're not taxed. And that amendment actually allowed for taxing jurisdictions across the state to basically extend that period from 175 days to 2 years. The reason being is, number one, the components are where the jobs are. And there's such a long lead time on aircraft parts that they may sit in a warehouse for years before they go on a vehicle, before that's transported out. Bell Helicopter is undoubtedly our number one project here that we're requesting this for. And I do have a spokesman for Bell. He's a local gentleman, George Herring. George would like the same thing. I welcome him, but any questions?
George, is it customary to hold inventory for 2 years? Is that pretty normal?
It's good word, Commissioner Stacy. It is, it's not so much customary as it is due to, well, our Bell Helicopter and the aircraft industry's biggest issue is getting parts. And so if you're trying to get parts just in time so that you can build an aircraft and sell it to a commercial customer or the government, you're really playing with forces beyond your control. So that forces us to, for instance, for Boeing, we may have at a particular time 6 fuselages from Boeing at our plant. They may not stay there. They shouldn't stay there more than 6 months, but there are parts that might. This particular issue doesn't affect so much our current operations as it will in Amarillo, at least the 525 commercial helicopter that we're starting to build now. That's where the biggest impact is going to be for Bell Helicopter in Amarillo. Dallas, Fort Worth has already approved this extension. So that impact that we've had in the past, which is probably $4 million impact Bell Helicopter annually, is really all in Fort Worth and Dallas. There is some here in Amarillo. Currently, the biggest impact is going to be after the 525 breaks.
And you've indicated you've already started operational work on the 525?
Yes, we've got actually 3 aircraft in the process of assembly at this point. The schedule has us flying the first aircraft either late this year or the first part of the year.
So to Brian's discussion point of both of the exemptions, if you will, and I'll speak to the Freeport versus the other that you suggested.
Goods in transit.
Goods in transit. I'm hearing, if I'm following you correctly, an entity can't take both.
That's correct.
And so from Bell Helicopter's perspective, the Freeport goods exemption is really where you feel would be most beneficial versus the goods in transit. Is that right? Am I stating that correctly?
I believe that's true, although.
That's correct.
I would not be the one to say.
Most of their products are going outside Texas.
So just to make sure I'm understanding from a recap perspective, most of the financial impact you've indicated is in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Today, Amarillo operations, minimal, but really a projection of what's to come with the new 525 and really kind of positioning for that. Is that right?
That's correct. But keep in mind, this is not specifically for Bell Helicopter.
Sure.
This also has a significant impact for economic development or bringing in additional aircraft companies to the Amarillo area, which we're hoping will happen because that helps Bell Helicopter to have that additional base here.
Okay.
Further comment? Okay, I will have a motion if we approve the time limit from 175 days to 730 days. And we have a second. And all in favor? Passes 5-0. Item 16, compensation committee to consider and act upon appointing the committee to review the county's compensation structure and make recommendations to the commission's court. Thanks, Mike.
I just put it on the agenda because y'all indicated, just so we wouldn't lose this in the show.
Yeah, we did, and I think seeing some verbiage on some compensation figures and sort of highlights more that we need to probably look more into that. So, and I know that there was a young lady from TAC, Michelle, and scheduled to be in our area and a possible meeting around the June or July timeframe.
Right, and we're looking, she cannot come in June. She has no open time. And we've been looking in the month of July. I have gotten, the majority are able to meet the 7th or 8th of July, and I have got a request into Michelle now to try to confirm on the 8th. I have not gotten a confirmation back yet this morning, but suspect I'll probably hear from her, certainly, if not by the end of the day today, tomorrow sometime, to be able to confirm on the 8th, and that would, then of course we would have to set a special meeting of that court.
So Kate, from your perspective, in terms of preparing for her visit in July, at least according to my knowledge of how we left for the last session, was to really start to vet through what exists today. I know there was a salary survey done 10 to 12 years ago, if I'm remembering correctly, and I think we left with, we needed to take a look at our internal process, internal job descriptions, and really just start to align. What is your perspective of what we need to do to prepare for that July visit?
It's my understanding that her visit in July will really be just to provide this court information on how they processed this same sort of situation in Wichita County when she was there, and also maybe hear some recommendations from her. In order to prepare for that, we can begin looking at where our positions are placed, what kind of structure we have, or lack of structure. It's my understanding that this court desired, at the end of the last commissioner's court, to develop a committee within the county to review our structure as it exists today, and then just begin to work through that process. And so it's my understanding that the purpose today is to establish that committee and just begin to meet and look at our positions as they exist today, both within their individual departments and within our own county internally. And then bring that information back to the court.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair recap. And one of the comments that I made at the previous court commissioner was there was an existing HR committee. I'm not sure if this would fall within those same parameters. And maybe a follow-up question to that, Kay, would be who you would recommend from an HR director perspective of who needs to sit on that working committee, if you will.
Well, I would certainly recommend someone from the auditor's office, county attorney's office, and then some of the larger departments, certainly within the county.
And I think we've noted that not to have to start from ground zero. We've already pretty much established some type of background committee prior years. So we need to look at that structure, see how that was developed at that time, and move from that.
From what I can tell, what was done previously with that prior study that was done, I believe that job description questionnaires were done by the department heads. And I have the questionnaires as they existed at that time. But I do not believe that they ever progressed to a final job description. Not that I can find, anyway. It's, from what I can tell, the questionnaires were done by the department heads. They were possibly used to create our job postings, but there were no job descriptions. The final product was not finalized, as near as I can tell.
Okay, and not to belabor the point as far as who sits on the committee, and certainly we don't want to have a loaded committee that would be overwhelming, but I know that there's probably a lot of departments that have vested interest, probably all departments, not to say a lot of, so I don't want to diminish their position as also being on that committee. So if that was done, how would that look? What would that look like?
I would certainly recommend that we try to keep the number of participants to a manageable level. I would say no more than 8 members at most. Of course, we would get input from all departments. We certainly wouldn't want to exclude any department or any area.
And you're certainly not counting the commissioners as being a part of that committee in that number.
Right.
You're not, or you are?
I was not.
Okay.
And that's not a concrete number. That's, I certainly haven't, in my mind, established what the makeup of that committee. I would lean on this court to tell me what you desire, what kind of representation you would like to see on the committee, with the exception of, again, I would highly recommend that we have auditors. I believe Mike Head expressed interest and oversees a large department. I think, some of the larger departments would certainly be useful, and I will also pass on to the court that Malin Huntley with Elections Administration has come to me and asked that she be able to participate on the committee.
Well, and I think from what representing the smaller the small departments.
Well, that we don't, to my knowledge, we don't have a committee set. I don't know.
Yeah, and certainly that's from my perspective where I'm leaning on, Kate, from an HR director perspective. I think the court has indicated we have the lack of a salary structure is the question. And so from your expertise, I'm really looking for direction of what you need to support, who the players need to be to support what you potentially see as the vision for this county. And I find myself a little at odds giving direction of a composition of a committee that will really be driven by the HR director and really the HR umbrella. So I find myself leaning on what your expertise would be of what you need this committee to look like composition-wise.
I would tend to agree with that, but I want to be very careful that we don't streamline this too succinct, that we sort of eliminate those smaller departments that certainly do have a vested interest in what we are speaking to. So I don't have a problem with leaning toward your expertise as far as helping us walk that road, but we want to make sure that we have an overview of the composition of who sits on that committee. And not eliminating smaller or medium-sized departments.
Would it be appropriate to open that up for department heads that have an interest to participate in that committee?
I think that's certainly a first volley. I would think probably quite a few would raise their hands about participating in that, which is certainly normal. Commissioner Kelly, you're the liaison to the HR, so certainly you would have a seat on that committee, and what your thoughts were on the development.
And I think you're gonna get too many folks on those committees, and I think we need to be, very specific and, you know, get a couple of large, get a couple of small, and, let's limit it to maybe 5, maybe, let's get an odd number. I think maybe 7 might be the maximum that I think we need to consider, but I'd like to go with just 5, if we could. And I'll work with Kay on that to get the right numbers and get those people in position.
Okay. And I apologize, I did not interpret the agenda item as that this board was looking to me to bring.
Is this something we're gonna need to approve, or can we just go ahead and do it, get the committee together and without having a commissioner approve?
I think we can go ahead and, get the committee, certainly lean toward you as the liaison and, just, move forward from there.
And let's do that, we'll get together and hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have a committee and have a meeting by then. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, no action on that item. I guess we'll go no action. Item 17, aerial fireworks, to consider and act upon a ban on aerial fireworks during July 4th fireworks sales season, as authorized by 352.051 Texas Local Government Code, provided drought conditions exist as defined by the same statute. Pat, how you doing this morning? This rain was great.
I see him smiling.
Rain was great, but we need about 4 or 5 more rains like that, I guess.
Yes. The KBDI this morning is in the very far north part, has a little section that has 478, I believe it was. The rest of the county's in the 300s. And the one says 575, so we're not anywhere close to it right now.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know, you got to adopt this order, you have to do it by June 15th. So talking to Pat, Richard, we kind of thought we put on the agenda for this meeting just in case, and mainly just to get everybody kind of thinking about it. But I don't think even we really expected to pass any order today, because even last week before the rain, because the drought index was still heading towards that level, hadn't quite reached it in all parts of the county.
So 575 is the number we're looking at?
Yeah, yes, sir. It's pretty dry, I'd say.
And I talked to the fire weatherman at the weather service out here, Ken Schneider, and he said that their forecast right now are for some more rain this weekend. This is from the first part of the weekend. And he said they're thinking that June is gonna be back more towards normal precipitation, which is 2 3/4 to 3 1/4 inches. So they're actually, right now, the weather service is thinking we're gonna have more rain during the month of June.
And we're currently sitting at what, right now, KBI, we're sitting at what?
Did you get the reason?
It's 3 something.
The average was way low. It was almost half of what it was Thursday.
It was real marginal last week. It was getting ready to be in the range that we have to have for this ban. And this morning I looked at it and I was like, wow.
Yeah, I was amazed.
So we cannot pass it without the 575.
No, sir.
I will inform the court that I did ask for a list from our fire chief of all of the volunteer firefighters that went to fight the Fritz fire. So I have that, and I'll draft a letter on behalf of the court to just say thank you and bring it for each one of you to sign.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, pass this item. Item 18, capital credit fund, acceptance of community and economic development funds to consider and act upon accepting a portion of unclaimed capital credits and designating the community or economic development use of such funds as authorized by 7602 Texas Property Code.
We got a letter from the comptroller, and there's some money that's unclaimed under statute. Part of that comes back to the commissioner's court. He uses sort of grants for very limited areas, for very limited purposes, and you know, some of them. Anyway, we actually got a letter from the comptroller saying, "Why haven't you guys explained this yet?" And you know, they kind of extended the deadline course, a little bit. So it's about $5,000, $5,400. And so we thought now some of the things you can use it for include, like such things as you can use it to support Save the Bridge, child welfare stuff. Or you can use it for literacy projects. So we've heard that, that suggestion had been made in connection with the money we got from the company.
Sherryland.
Yeah, Sherryland a couple of weeks ago. So it's up to the Commissioners Court what you want to do with it. We thought we'd better accept it and let them know we're taking it at least first, because they gave us kind of a deadline.
When is the new deadline? Because the letter we have is dated February 14th with response time by March 31st. I'm not sure what the
June 1st.
delay was. Do we know that?
I do not know, but I can tell you they're giving us June 1st.
Any strings attached to this money?
No, not as long as we use it for designated purposes. So,
Just wondering.
for just
I have
certain purposes.
called the city again in regards to asking how much it would cost us if we were able to pay the $18 a year for people who live outside of the city to use the city library, and still have received no response from the city librarian or the mayor's office. So I don't know what to say about that. I can't get any movement.
I'm gonna go ahead and, guess, if not any further discussion, I'll make a motion that we accept the funds, whatever they might be, and to be used, designated at a later time.
Second.
Motion approved, second, all in favor? Passes 5-0. Employment items, number 19. To consider and act upon the following employment items: Road and Bridge, the employment of Joseph R. Frosto, maintenance 1, effective May 26, 2014.
I just have one question on the backup. It indicates a replacement for, but it's blank. Who we're
It
replacing?
was one replacement for one that was let go.
And that's typically on the form of the position that you're replacing. Is that correct, Kate?
It typically shows that.
Okay.
Entertain motion.
Make a motion that we approve the employment of Joseph R. Frosto, maintenance 1, effective 5/26/2014.
Motion approved, and second, all in favor? Passes 5-0. Item 20. Executive session, real property, fire station number 3, to hold an executive session to deliberate the purchase, exchange, or value of real property, where deliberation in open meeting would have detrimental effect on the position of the county in negotiations with the third party pursuant to 551.072 Texas Government Code, and B, take any action appropriate after the executive session.
We do need to meet on that, but you can go on if you want to.
Okay, let's go to item, we'll pass that for a moment. Item number 22, your report. Your report on the Clark County Detention Center and to take any action necessary. And I certainly love the figures from this morning, 482 in custody, 91 females. So what happened that we emptied the jail?
Being nice, I guess, for weather.
Get people out for the holiday, so you can go rearrest them?
Yeah.
All females, localized?
Yes, all over here. We don't have any children.
So recognized. Any county insurance items?
Nothing new.
Okay, thank you. And receive any agenda items for next meeting? Nothing? Okay.
Commissioners, I don't have an agenda item, but I did want to let y'all know, we did get our financial transparency award this year at the platinum level, so.
Which is improvement.
Yeah.
This is the highest award that we get.
Well, we don't expect anything less than the highest. All right, we will break at this time for executive session. It is 10:26. And be back in session as soon as we get back in session. We're not coming in. We're not coming in.
We're headed right to that. It just depends. It should be too long. How about, if you're okay, how about we wait until after executive session? Yeah, we'll come back.
It is now 10:44. Court is back in session. At this time, there was no action taken. We have anything further from the court? At this time, we are adjourned. Thank you all.
More